Alright class, recess. Looks like these little boogers are enjoying their lunch. That's up until Grace Summerfield gets Eiffel 65 eyes and shakes her cup like a TikTok twerker. Her psychic powers crush the cup and her life. The narration tells us that a month later, half of the class also got game-ended. The news reports on a disease spreading around called idiopathic adolescent acute neurodegeneration, or IAAN for short.
IAAN.
Some more time passes, and 90% of America's children have bit the dust. Then some mysterious chaos ensues. Then Mr. President Gray gives his insights on the matter, which he says that his son survived the weird pandemic, and endorses some company called the CDC and claims it's not about politics, probably a lie, and he promises to find a cure for it, and leaves. Later, we see a nice mother and a father giving this adorable child a cutesy keychain.
Kuritama.
She's bedazzled, thanks him, and they send her off to dreamland. Sometime later in the night, she wakes up, takes the keychain, and sleeps next to her parents. She was planning to get comfy, but then a bump of PTSD suddenly rushed into her. It freaks her out and she leaves. The next morning, the little girl goes into the kitchen where her mommy is preparing something, but she gets spooked. She's asking how she got in there. Then she's weirded out by how her mom's acting. Looks like her mom doesn't really know her.
I am not your mommy.
Then locks her in the garage. It's kinda crummy to do even to a random little kid. She breaks down and cries, then a mogus. Two sussy men take her away. We see her in a school bus convoy being taken away with other kids, but man, it's guarded by military men. The narrator soon says if they keep this up, there soon won't be any kids left as you either got game ended or you go to these camps. The bus stops and lets the kids out. Awaiting the poor suckers is some loudmouth drill sergeant barking orders. Basically your Full Metal Jacket but with minors. Some bonehead tells them to piss off, but he's immediately thumped by a soldier.
Piss off!
On the ground, the ragamuffin looks at his thumper with orange eyes, and he actually gets to mind controlling her to wipe herself off. The other kids are rushed into the facility, while Mindstorm over there is beaten to a pulp. Later, the kid we're originally following gets confronted by a doctor asking her name. This is Ruby Daly, ladies and gents. She's gonna be our main squeeze for the flick, so don't forget her. She says she doesn't feel sick, but the doctor clarifies that it's not a sickness, rather the aftermath. He then asks her designated color.
Color?
Which he explains that greens are smarter, blues have matter-moving powers, golds can do shocky shocks, and reds and oranges are the most lethal. The doctor thinks she's green, but the computer says she's orange. She thinks something's up, so she makes a break for it. The doc runs after her with a needle, but she suddenly gets a grasp of him and her powers. It's time for a little control devil magic. She manipulates his mind to pass her off as one of the greens. The doctor's brain buys it, and he alters the computer record for her to read as a green.
You're green.
The kids are all being escorted and segregated by color, but no reds or oranges, except for her incognito, of course. Cue title card and cue time skip. Some Chinooks approach the facility, while the grown-up, surviving kids are escorted to a workshop, where they work on boots en masse. One of the soldiers approaches what looks to be a grown-up Ruby. He tells Ruby that she's doing it wrong.
Doing it wrong.
Then he screams like a twit, telling her to look at him. She says they're not allowed to look at him. This malding prune thinks she's too dumb to be a green, but one of the other greens interject, saying the armed man is stupid as well. Brave, but somewhat dumb, because she's dragged out of there. They send the kids out to do a frequency test, and no amount of studying will prepare them for this kind of suffering. Ruby blacks out. Later, she awakens to some lady, and she's cuffed to her bed, just like that. Dr. Kate Begbie introduces herself and calms her down. She claims she's there for her.
Then I'm here for you now.
But her time with Ruby's done, so she's escorted away by a guard. Once the coast is clear, Ruby checks the chart the doc left, and there's a note. It says they know she's actually orange, so she'll totally be splattered. It also tells her to go to the boiler room if she wants to live. Included is probably the key for her cuffs. A staff member says the frequency test is done and our winner is Ruby. The doctor says she wins the undivided attention of the captain. Sure enough, Ruby makes it to the boiler room. There she meets Dr. Kate, and she's got some clothes. She tells her to put it on as a disguise. Then she's taken to her car.
Cover your face.
If they see her face, it's game over, so she covers her face more. At gate inspection, Dr. Kate gives her ID and she passes Ruby as Dr. Rogers, but she's asked to remove her mask. The captain becomes really forceful, so he directly approaches Ruby and asks her to take that mask off. But Ruby quickly makes physical contact with him, brainwashes him to let them go. Success. Dr. Kate absolutely drives somewhere far away into the outside world, which Ruby gladly sees for the first time in a long time, as if it's almost heaven for her in West Virginia. Dr. Kate informs her that most people went to cities for work thanks to the economy plummeting due to no kids. Ergo, this is boomer heaven. Ruby can't wait to get home. But Dr. Kate isn't going to leave her home because it's not safe.
It's not safe there.
She vows to protect Ruby, and she also tells her that the oranges are supremely rare and usually killed on sight. In case of emergencies, she's given a tracking device disguised as a pendant. They arrive at a beat-up gas station, where Rob is introduced. Ruby stands her up on the introductions, which wins her some more civvy supplies, but she trips and she gets a hold of Rob's hand. This lets her peer into his mind, which depicts him roughly capturing some blue. She rushes into the station and changes clothes. There she finds a little kid with electric powers. The two outside see the commotion and rush in, but Ruby goes after the little kid running to a van.
Ruby!
She begs to be let in because Rob might try to end her thanks to his memories. The kid lets her in. Then the two dudes show up. They get spooked by the couple trying to look for Ruby, so they burn rubber. The two men ask the kid what happened. Then Ruby introduces herself,
I'm Ruby.
which the two dudes are left in surprise. Now the two guys don't want any strays, but Ruby says she got busted out and she's leaving. Liam doesn't want her to get captured again, so it's pedal to the metal. He introduces Chubbs, the other dude, and Zoo, the little girl. A moment later, Zoo points out the front, which some mongrel in a Dodge Charger is charging and shoots him. Chubbs says it's someone named Lady Jane, and she makes a U-turn to keep shooting at him, but she's rammed by Rob and Kate. Liam offers her the wheel since he's got this, and Chubbs is too nearsighted. Liam opens the doors and power goes in full display. The wind, twigs, and some debris impede Lady Jane until the Charger crashes into a pond.
Run faster!
All that's left is to block Kate and Rob with a log, and they're home free. Sometime later, they try to fix the damages to the van, and the banter begins. Chubbs is agreeing, so now they want to know why the League, Kate and Rob, is so bent on chasing her.
Chubbs, leave her alone.
She doesn't really want to say, so she opted to go home to Virginia. Liam doesn't let her go because the roads are filled with tracers, basically bounty hunters, like Lady Jane. Liam simps out and offers to come with her in the East River where a safe haven for kids is there, led by someone called the Slip Kid, who's rumored to be an orange. Slowly, she accepts their help because she's offered food. Later in the car, Liam warns Ruby against the League because they're crooked. Apparently, Liam used to be in the League, but he thought it was too militaristic.
You don't want help from the League.
This argument goes on for a while, so moving along to this guy being choked by the captain. Then he leaves that unlucky staff member with what might be a red. The captain outside orders a high bounty on Ruby's head, so every tracer will be after her. Back to the gang. They stop at a motel and Ruby gets a little PTSD, but Liam offers a gift of socks. Smooth, Liam. But this does get Ruby to thank him.
Thank you.
It's bedtime, and Zoo accidentally puts her arms on Ruby's hand, so she inadvertently reads her memories. They're inside a containment facility, and a massive prison break is ongoing. Liam frees everyone, but Zoo falls down and the military opens fire. Liam got to save Zoo and then dream over. The next morning, Zoo gets a fancy red dress to have Ruby wear. She wears it and shows it to Liam. Safe to say he goes full awooga. Then they both scrape letters from a van. Some tracers come out of the motel, but Ruby gets annoying orange eyes, then poof. Those tracers just leave peacefully. Later in the car, they hear some nonsense from the President's Cure ad, and they just laugh it off. Told you it was BS. There's their stop, an abandoned mall. Zoo lights it up with her zappy zap powers, and it's like Christmas in July. Shopping time. Imagine their joy when an entire mall is theirs for the taking. The fun begins. But it ends quickly when they see a get out sign. They're awkwardly put on top of each other, and some annoying wailing sound kicks in. The perps aren't done, so they're both dragged across the mall until Zoo shows them the lightning. Turns out the perps are some soup kids too. The kids are probably the owners of this turf, so they offer some food and a night's worth of rest. They later talk about the Slip Kid and the haven in the East River, but they swore to secrecy on where the Slip Kid's base really is. This forces Ruby to use some of her Professor X magic, but he only says Edo.
Idio.
The night seeps in, and Ruby reads Zoo a bedtime story before talking to Charles. In retrospect, Charles is keeping watch because they might loot him. The two talk in secret on what Ito means, but Charles has no luck. Ruby sees some of the cryptic messages Charles wrote for his parents that sadly didn't have any turnout. Suddenly, Charles gets a realization that Ito might not be a place, but a frequency.
What a frequency.
So they tune into a specific radio station, and there it is, a distress call from Lake Prince, Virginia.
Lake Prince, Virginia.
Back to the road trip. They're already at Lake Prince, which is coincidentally near Ruby's old place. They arrive at Virginia, and they let Ruby visit her house first. But Ruby arrives at a peak, and she thinks she's still a stranger to him, so she leaves it all behind her and runs away. She arrives at a field where Liam catches her and gives her back her weeb keychain. Liam tells her that she has a new family despite her loss. And cue the overhyped kissing scene. Psych, it's a fluke. Zoo has some Twinkies back, so she heads back, but Lady Jane is back. She pistol whips Ruby and subdues Liam. It's revealed that she also has Chubbs and Zoo hogtied. She says Liam alone fetches a price of 150,000 bones. But isn't that a tad cheap? Well, Lady Jane's brain is cheap and makes the mistake of grabbing Ruby, which she grabs back and gives us the old Wolverine Origins treatment. Make her walk until she sees the abyss. Man, Ruby's OP. That's until she passes out and wakes up in the van overhearing Chubbs wanting to ditch her and Liam protesting against it. She tells them that she's gonna leave, but apparently they're talking about Betty. So put your orange anger eyes away, Ruby. Over lunch, Ruby talks about her discontent for not being able to fully control her powers.
I can't even control it.
A single touch can cause chaos. They have to keep moving. So Liam tells Betty his farewell, and they hike. Like a really long hike. Well, it's good for the legs. Soon, they find a railroad where Ito is seen. They're near. Oh, also near being another headshot. Group of people with guns are seen rushing over, shouting to Ruby's group to get on the ground. They all restrain themselves to the ground, and it turns out that Liam knew one of the would-be attackers. It's all peaches and gravy from here. As Mike here says, they found the safe haven for kids, a place that can rival Epstein's Island, as kids and teens can be seen everywhere. They're all happy and doing their own thing too. As Mike says that they don't segregate here and that they stand together. Just like that, they earn a ticket to meet the Slip Kid. They step into his office and it turns out that Slip Kid is none other than Clancy Gray. Told you that politics jazz is nothing but hot garbage. Clancy knows every one of them, including Ruby.
Ruby Daly.
Turns out both of them are the last two oranges. Apparently, the gang is legendary. Clancy gives them a place to stay, and a party is held later on. The two lovebirds have a little banter about Harry Potter, until Liam asks her to dance, which she refuses, and then he uses his powers to get her over to the dance floor. Some more mushy stuff while slow dancing ensues, then Clancy Gray is seen looking from afar. The next day, Ruby goes into Clancy's quarters. Apparently, Ruby didn't get any work assignments, so she tries to get work from Clancy. He says her work is to work with him, and oh boy, kinda gives off some red flags. Clancy makes her sit down, and we're treated to a reel of Clancy's traumatizing experience as a test subject for a cure. So much that his father, the President of the United States, sanctioned his torture. When no cure came up, the President just straight up lied. Clancy suspects they might be afraid of him. Then he offers to train Ruby with her powers. Lesson number 1 is wireless mind control.
Okay.
Clancy wants to teach Ruby to get into people's heads without touching them, but something stinks of rotten fish in this little paradise of childish Eden. Soon, they test out the powers on unsuspecting pepper farmers. She actually got to do it. For the next lesson, Clancy thinks she's still holding back, so it's time for some recapping of repressed memories. She basically shows him what happened, and she accidentally erased her family's memories. Trauma aside, Clancy is wowed by the gift, and right outside, Liam is getting a good old serving of NTR.
I've just never met someone like you.
Liam backs off and he actually meets Ruby back at their tent. He's madly peanut butter and jelly over the two having an argument. Then Liam storms off. Ruby goes looking for him in the forest, and she catches up to Chubbs staring at a lake instead. Ruby kinda wishes they were back on their road trip, so Chubbs adds his distaste to it. He doesn't like all these strict rules. Chubbs just wants to go home.
Home.
Back at Zuckerberg's place, he's selling them all out. because he's talking to the captain and is giving him an inventory for everyone. Says to the captain, time for a harvest. And I was right with the red flags. Ruby suddenly goes in and asks if Chubbs can use his Mac, but he actually allows it on one condition, for Ruby to teach the mind wipe technique. Ruby's reluctant at first, but she agrees. So they get to some mental work by going back to the forgotten event, and it leads to Clancy betting her. Told you the guy wasn't good. Clancy says he'll just erase her memory of that horrid event, but Ruby storms out. In the forest, she bumps into Liam, and he's concerned why she's crying, but she wants to be left alone. Liam's insisting, and Ruby accidentally imprints what happened to him. Liam, of course, wants to game end him, but Ruby convinces him to just leave.
Let's just leave.
And later that night, they get Chubbs and Zoo, and they walk into a trap. Clancy subjugates Liam. Apparently, Clancy's trying to raise an army of child super soldiers. It's also revealed he's usurped his own father. Clancy gives the bewildered Liam a good old thumping. He basically wants Liam still alive as a bargaining chip for Ruby, but she mind controls the captain instead. Let there be brains everywhere. Zoo zaps the lights and they make a run for it. Outside, 2 Ospreys deliver more soldiers, and they unmask the Reds, a bunch of walking napalm cannons. So that's what happened to the doctor. They torch the place like Godzilla and the gang gets cornered, until Liam shields him with a barge. Ruby stands her ground to fight Clancy, while the rest try to save and evacuate as many people as they can. Ruby takes control of a bunch of men, but Clancy makes him aim downwards and towards her. She dodges and they all game end each other. Soon she's subjugated by Clancy.
It's okay, Ruby.
But that all changed when Ruby drops an Osprey on him. Chubb saves her but gets his keister burned too much. The fight is lost, and the rest are rounded up by the military. Chubbs wants her to save herself, but she finally uses the pendant to signal Kate. A morning later, Liam finds the two and they seriously need a hospital for Chubbs. So Ruby comes clean about calling the League. Liam has no choice but to stay with him.
I'm not leaving you.
The League comes by and picks him up. Seems today, Ruby wakes up in a nice bed. Kate is there to say that this place owned by the League is safe. Then she says Chubbs is in the hospital. Things get shaky on their argument about the League's deeds, so Rob loses his top, and Ruby bends mine so Liam isn't so violent. Ruby has one condition on fighting with the League: to let Liam go, so they allow her to talk to him. So much for the security risk, because Liam's just sitting comfortably on another bed. Finally, our 2-star crossover lovers are reunited, but Liam tells the story of ice cream. Well, he tells the story of his last trip to Virginia Beach with his family, but it turns out to be a daydream about Ruby by the end of the story. He goes on and on about his mushy feelings for Ruby, and he confesses his love. Ruby asks him to close his eyes to finish the story, with her eyes glowing orange, and a little lip lock ensues. Turns out, Ruby uses the moment to erase herself from Liam's memories. Just like that, she mentally Thanos snaps herself out of his life. Ruby stands back before Liam could recoil, and he doesn't remember a thing.
Who are you?
Kate comes in and the two introduce themselves as the League. They want to let him go with some supplies. Liam doesn't buy it at first, but he goes. Ruby lets him go with a tearful "be careful," and it turns out she put the keychain on Liam's bag. At the end of it all, Ruby monologues on how she has stepped into the light to protect their greatest cause, their family. At the end, Clancy's alive and raises an army, while Ruby, no different, assembles her own of compound V-roided kids. Pack it up, because that was the Darkest Minds. What do you guys think about this mind-melting movie? Why don't you let us know in those comments below with the hashtag Cinema Recap. Again, this was The Darkest Minds by 20th Century Fox, starring Amandla Stenberg, Harris Dickinson, and Skylan Brooks. Till that next rally to war, au revoir.